Robert Simon, an art dealer in New York, had just convinced the public that he had discovered a lost painting by Leonardo da Vinci. The academic consensus was divided if this was a real Da Vinci or a collaborative work with one of his students. Nonetheless, it was featured in the National Gallery in London as an authentic Da Vinci painting. It was time for Simon to cash in. He had hoped to sell it to a museum in the United States with an asking price of $100 million. Asking for $100 million for a heavily restored, possible Da Vinci is a tall order, and no museum was interested, except for the Dallas Museum of Art. Its curator, Maxwell Anderson, admitted that he was rolling the dice on this painting. However, he wasn't able to shore up enough philanthropic donations to bring the Salvator Mundi to the Lone Star State. The philanthropists of Dallas were uneasy about buying a maybe Da Vinci. Some of the boosters didn't even like the painting, with one calling it a fruity-looking Jesus. Except they used a different F word that isn't advertiser-friendly. It was time to start looking for a private buyer, one who could afford the $100 million price tag, and was less discerning than the boosters of the Dallas Art Museum. Dmitry Rybolovlev is a Russian oligarch who made his fortune in extracting minerals for fertilizers. Like most Russian oligarchs, he has a history of controversy. He has been accused of causing the biggest domestic environmental disaster since Chernobyl, murdering one of his business rivals, hiding his wealth in Panama during his divorce, and he bought a mansion in Palm Beach for almost twice its value in a possible money laundering scheme. Rybolovlev was interested in the Salvator Mundi and had deep enough pockets to afford this painting of Jesus. He had already been collecting fine art for a few years, with some observers speculating that his collection was a means of money laundering and tax evasion. Whatever his motives, he wanted the Salvator Mundi. Rybolovlev hired the services of Yves Boivet, who had already purchased other pieces on Rybolovlev's behalf. After researching the history of the Salvator Mundi, Boivet warned the oligarch. He urged caution given the disputed authorship and the heavy restoration. He advised the oligarch that it should only be purchased as a decorative painting and nothing more. Despite this warning, Rybolovlev instructed his partner to start negotiating a price. Boivet was able to negotiate the price down to $80 million, plus a $3 million commission to the auction house hired by Simon. However, Boivet told the oligarch that the selling price was $127 million, plus his commission fee, of course. He went as far as to provide falsified negotiations that showed the final price was $127 million. Unaware of the scam in progress, Rybolovlev agreed to the $127 million price tag. Boivet had just made about $40 million in one day of work. He had covered his tracks well, forcing the auction house to sign an ironclad non-disclosure agreement, and it is common for auction houses to respect privacy. From their perspective, Boivet was the buyer, and not a middleman, but the scam was accidentally exposed by journalist Scott Rayborn, who reported that the painting was sold for between $75 and $80 million. The journalist was unaware of Boivet's $40 million markup. When the oligarch caught wind of this, he was not amused. Instead of immediately reacting, Rybolovlev laid a trap for his Swiss partner. He invited Boivet to his apartment in Monaco to pay him for his dealings on a Rothko painting. Upon entering the lobby, Boivet was immediately arrested on the charges of fraud and money laundering. His bail was set at 10 million euro. The fertilizer oligarch mounted more civil cases against his former advisor, accusing him of committing fraud on all of their art dealings, to the tune of $1 billion. Other parties would file criminal and civil charges against Boivet, which included accusations of stolen Picassos and peddling forgeries. The whole debacle became known as the Boivet Affair. Depending on whose story you wish to believe, Boivet may be the biggest art fraudster in history. Rybolovlev's appreciation of the Salvator Mundi had soured. Understandably so. He had been made a fool of, and didn't want to keep the painting as a reminder. About 4 years after purchasing this work, the oligarch wanted it gone. He hired Christie's to do the auctioning, as they were quite experienced in high-value items. During the Boivet affair, the scholarly opinion of the Salvator Mundi hadn't changed. There was still a split of those who thought it was by Da Vinci and those who thought it just came from his studio. But this didn't stop Christie's from advertising it as a bona fide Da Vinci. In fact, they launched a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign around the painting. They took it on an international tour, available to the public via pop-up exhibits. It was branded much like a blockbuster movie, under the title of The Last Da Vinci. The press, for the most part, gobbled it up, the biggest guppies being CBS and the Daily Telegraph.
By Leonardo da Vinci. The portrait is called Salvator Mundi, which means savior of the world in Latin. It was created about 500 years ago and was thought to have been destroyed.
Any serious questions about its authenticity?
None, really.
Christie's claims there's a consensus claiming that it might be real. Actually, it's 12 people, and the foremost Da Vinci expert in the world thinks, on the contrary, that this is not remotely like a Da Vinci.
Ignoring the accusations of false advertising, the Christie's marketing machine marched forward, and they had branded the Salvator Mundi as the male Mona Lisa. One of their more notable marketing gimmicks involved placing a camera that faced viewers of the painting during its tour. It was cleverly done, as the viewers were surrounded by a black background, much like the painting. The marketing campaign was a masterpiece within itself, and it would show at the auction.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the Leonardo da Vinci, the Salvator Mundi, the masterpiece by Leonardo of Christ the Saviour, previously in the collections of 3 kings of England, at 90 million. 95, and I go 110 over here. 110. I have it at 110 million. Who'll give me 120? Give me 140. 130 million. 140 million is bid at 140 million with Alex at 140 million. 150 might take it at 140 million holding at the moment. Where is that? 150. Welcome at 150 million on the left. 160 might take it at 150 million. Many places still. 160 is bid back to Alex at 160 million, at 190 million, give me 200. 190 is bid. 200 million is bid at 200 million, at 200 million. 200 million, please. 200 million is bid. Give me 10. At 200 million is bid. 200 million is here, currently hanging with Alex on my right at 200 million for the Leonardo. At 200 million, looking for 210. Sir, you coming back in? At 240 million. Currently, 245 million is bid at 245 million. 250 million is bid. It's back to François de Porter. The 270 million, the hand goes up. 270 against you. Alex, would you like 275? $280 million. Are we all done? Maybe not. Don't take the photograph quite yet. 286 million. 286 million. Will you give me 290, Alex?
300.
I thought so. 300 million. Let's see if that's done it. 300 million. Give me a bid. 318 is bid. The hand went up at 318 million now. At $318 million. With Francois. 320 million. We're still not done. At 320 million. At 320 million now. Give me 5, Francois. 320 I have. 320 million. I'll have to hurry you. At 320. 328 million. 328 million. Back to François de Porter. 330 million. 332 million. Back to François. At 332 million. 332 is the number.
350.
For those of you following online, you may not have heard it. The bid was 350 was called on the telephone. At 350 million for Leonardo Salvator Mundi. At 350 million. Here at Christie's at 350 million, and looking for another bid, please, Francois, at 350. 352 million. 352 million is bid at $352 million. $355 million is bid. 70 is bid. 370 million. Back to Francois' client at $370 million, ladies and gentlemen. 400 million. $400 million is the bid. Here in the sale room at 400 million with Alex Rotter. The bid is here at $400 million. For the Salvator Mundi at 400 million. Francois is out. Are you sure, Francois? At 400 million then. Thank you all for your bidding here and on the telephone to my left. And of course here, Loic and Francois. It is with Alex Rotter at 400 million. Leonardo Salvator Mundi selling here at Christie's. $400 million is the bid, and the piece is sold.
In addition to the $400 million gavel price, there was a $50 million auctioneer's fee, easily making this the most expensive painting in the world. While this was a historic occasion, a new mystery was born.
It is the greatest guessing game in the art world today. Who bought Salvator Mundi?
$450 million for the Last Da Vinci in private hands. So who is the mystery buyer?
No one yet knows who now owns the Last Da Vinci.
Who was not only able but willing to write a $450 million check for the painting known as the Last Da Vinci?
George, I said to you yesterday, probably a billionaire that bought it, and your response to me was, well, duh. But
the winning bid was made on the phone, and that person may want to remain anonymous until he gets the $450 million prize painting in his possession.
The buyer was rather calm for bidding this kind of money.
This is not a garden variety billionaire, whoever it is, and this has now set off an international process of elimination.
One man who certainly has the cash right now is Jeff Bezos.
Could it be an American, a Saudi prince, a Chinese billionaire?
A lot of speculation is on China because China right now wants to be the dominant country in the world for everything, including the arts.
Can probably rule this guy out as the new owner. With an estimated net worth of just half the paintings, Leonardo can't afford this Leonardo.
The mystery buyer and their motives will be covered in the next episode of this series, which will be made available next week. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss it. Or you can watch it now, ad-free, on Patreon. A big thank you to the patrons who fund this channel, including VIP patrons Marnie and Steven.